Welcome to episode 16 of the Worship Online podcast. My name is Bretton, a worship leader and co-host here on the podcast, and I'm joined with Libby. What's up, Libby?
Hi, guys. Libby Lewis here, worship leader and vocal coach here in Nashville.
Yes. Yep. And I've been on the podcast with us the last couple weeks and throughout this month. It's going to be so fun. I'm pumped for today.
Me too.
Before we get rolling, be sure to sign up for the annual free subscription we're giving away. All you have to do is go to worshiponline.com/podcast, put your email in, and then we're going to be picking some winners. We've already given a few away. It's been pretty exciting. So you can do that simply. You can also email us any questions, podcast@worshiponline.com. You can leave reviews. We'd love to see you there. But today, before we get started, which it's going to be a big episode, we're actually talking about how to balance performance versus worship. But before we get started, let's talk Q&A. We got a couple questions.
Yeah, so we wanted to answer the questions you guys sent in via email. So some of the questions we got these last few weeks are, one, asking about, this is really specific, do you have any suggestions for a worship team whose leader is behind the drums? Ooh, unique situation. Good for you.
That is very interesting. So is it the worship leader behind the drums, or is it the worship team whose leader is behind the drums? It's different.
We're not 100% sure.
Like,
but
is it music director? Is it worship leader? If music director, obviously they can talk to the whole band.
Yeah.
Suggestions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously going to be different for everybody. Worship leader, though, you better have a good headset mic. That's all I'm saying.
If you're singing and playing, that's really unique.
Going Phil Collins style.
Yeah.
That is really unique.
I actually had a worship leader once who was just the drummer. He wasn't the singer or anything, but he was the worship leader, and he would just assign other people to sing.
Oh, cool.
One of the best worship leaders I've ever worked with.
Wow.
One of the best drummers I've ever worked with, too. But it was really unique because he was the worship leader. He didn't sing.
Wow.
And he did an amazing job because he somehow led through those drums. Like, it was...
That's a really cool thing to say, because I think that that's true. And I think any and everybody on stage is a worship leader. It doesn't matter if you're a singer or drummer or guitar player. Everyone is leading worship because we're all worshiping, and that's serving people, and that's going to lead people. So however you can do that is great.
Yeah,
all right, what's the other question?
Okay, so next one. Great question. I would really be interested in knowing how to have unity between the band and the tech team. Great question.
That is
definitely something that needs to be talked about.
The fact that it's even being asked is so good, because I think that a lot of people just don't pay attention to
Everyone needs to ask this question.
It's like the biggest debate. It's like such a real thing. Like, okay, so I've been privileged to get to do both.
Nice. That's great.
To help with like sound and to help like lead worship.
Yeah.
So anytime I'm doing sound, I legit think about the audio console as an instrument.
It is, yeah.
And you kind of have to think like that as a sound person. So I think it kind of goes two ways. It all starts with relationships. You got to have a good relationship with your tech team. Go out, get coffee, grab dinner. Even if you're not, if you're not on the same page, get on the same page, because they are the same. They are one and the same.
Make sure everyone on your team knows their name.
And really, it's like we just kind of say creative team sometimes, or like worship team. Like it's all kind of, obviously there's production. There's very logistical things that go into production as far as lighting and wiring and like the things that a lot of like musicians just don't think about. But at the end of the day, when it comes to service, we're all a team. We're all doing the same thing. We're trying to cultivate an environment and create an environment for people to encounter God. And I think that that can't be done with disunity. It's done with community and unity. And so get together, be a family, and watch how it changes your entire outlook. Because at the end of the day, if you guys just can't get along, that's going to translate, and it's actually it's not going to be good. It's
definitely going to translate. And I love what you said about just like knowing, like seeing the console as an instrument, because it is like your sound, like man or woman, whoever they are, like that is an instrument on your team. And so they need to be treated just like as any member of the team, like they're a member of your team. Like that's an instrument.
Yeah, musicians always think of sound guys as they should serve me, because I'm the source of the music, and then they're like the guys putting it in the house, so it needs to sound good. But or whether monitor engineer, like you're here to help me kind of thing. But really, it's a two-way street. We're there to help them. So I would say to worship team members, get there early, help plug in microphones, help like clean up the stage, help wrap cables, clean up. Like always ask anyone all the time, how can I help you? That's just kind of a blanket statement.
Definitely.
But I think it kind of works. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, so we've got a huge topic today, talking about performance versus worship, and we're going to get into it right after we roll this intro. All right, here we go. It's episode 16. This is a big one.
Yeah.
I'm actually excited. I think that this is a pretty big question.
Huge question. We get this question probably more than any other.
Yeah, I think it's a huge. It's something that I think we all need to constantly kind of check in ourselves. Am I performing or am I worshiping? Because I think it's all about the posture of the heart.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this before we started, but I think music it's the gift. But it's also just the conduit to helping people, serving people, and ministering to people. But it's actually the posture of the heart that determines whether you're performing or worshiping.
Yeah.
Worship is obedience. It's something that we're called to do. I heard this really cool thing last night. A good friend of ours was just talking to us, and he was saying how the response to worship is the presence of God. Ooh. And when we worship, it's an act of obedience, which invites his presence. Performance kind of does the opposite. Yeah. If you think about it, like if your heart's all kind of self-consumed, which is essentially what performing is, like showing off
for your talents. Yeah.
That's kind of the antithesis of that. Instead of look at God, it's look at me, and that's not a good place to be.
So how do you do that? How do you lead worship when it's so ingrained in our nature as musicians and singers to want to perform? Because I think coming with that talent, it's something that just comes naturally. But how do you separate that when you're leading worship and kind of drop everything you've learned over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between the gift, like the whole time is your mind on just thinking about the melody and the notes versus the words that you're singing. Not just am I going to memorize the lyrics, but actually thinking about like what I'm singing to God. We kind of always had that conversation about do you believe the words that you're singing? Because I think that kind of determines even how you're leading in worship, because I think people can tell the difference, Yeah,
they can tell when you're just singing because you like the sound of your own voice, or if you're singing because you want to preach the words that you're singing. Yeah, and I think helping people understand that too, like in those moments where you're able to kind of lead people into whatever it is you're singing, or even just a response to worship, those flow moments, like really helping people understand like, this is a moment for you to encounter God. This is a moment for you to press into his presence and actually be with our creator who wants to change your situation. Like if that's your outlook, if that's your, like even at the outset, you're like, that's where I'm at. That's my headspace. Yeah. I think performance doesn't really even exist. But it is. It's kind of like that weird. Yeah, it's a weird balance. It's really hard balance, and I love what you were just talking about earlier. Like it all starts with the heart, and worship. We were just talking about this, has nothing to do with music. Essentially, like God created music to give us this amazing way to worship the Lord that is so cool, and it connects us in this way. It could only be from God. But in the end, like worship is nothing to do with music. It's all about your heart, and it all starts so much further before you even step foot on stage. It starts in the quiet place. It starts with how you treat people, how you love people, and all of that is your heart, and that is worship. It's how you live and how you honor God in every moment of every day. Yeah, and I feel like every episode we're saying this, but how are you serving people? How are you serving? Like I mean, you could even say, how are you loving people? How are you helping people? Whatever avenue you're in, whether it's music or whether you're in business, the whole point is to help people, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't create music. I don't record or write or anything like that just to be consumed with myself. Like, that's really lame. Like, what's the end game? Like, I already have to live with myself all the time. I don't think about it anymore than I have to. And even if you talk to successful business people, like you get people that have a lot of money, let's say to start, and they buy these really big office buildings and they have this really sleek gear and all this stuff. But if they're not really doing it to help people, they're not going to last. But if their business actually kind of steps into helping people,
they're gonna thrive.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that that's in worship. It's the same way. Are we helping people? Are we helping people understand? But just like you said, like whether you're in business, whether you're in the quiet place, whether you're at the supermarket, are you loving people? Because that is an act of obedience. That is a posture of the heart that is worship unto the Lord.
Yeah.
You know, versus a self-consumed.
Exactly.
Like on stage, am I thinking about like the fashion that I am wearing, or am I thinking, you know,
how's
like
my
there's
hair
different
look?
things,
Like,
exactly,
yeah.
like the things that are so surface level, or is that just not even a thought, you know? And it's more just about the heart. It's the posture of the heart. I think that's where it really starts, and that may not be what you want as far as the answer, because I mean, it's not like we're experts. I think, by the way, let's just pause.
Yeah.
How did we get here?
I know.
I feel like we're helping people with these questions that are real, like heartfelt questions.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how we're on the other side of this microphone.
I know.
But it's like,
I'm humbled.
Because we're kind of in the same place. Like the whole point of this is to help you as a worship leader, as a worship team. Like that's why that's why Worship Online exists, you know, which I think that if we were to sit here and be like, this is what you do to be an expert in worship, then something's really wacky, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, we're just here to help kind of calibrate.
Yeah.
And it's like, at the end of the day, get in the presence of God. He's going to show you. And we're here to encourage you to that.
Absolutely. And to talk about things that every worship leader deals with, and to know like you're not alone. And just having these conversations first off is so important. And we just want to build a community of worship leaders that can help each other, that we can learn from each other's mistakes. And
well, and I think you put on here too, like staying humble and staying excellent, like with the whole idea of like performance versus worship. I know where people can kind of think like, if we're gonna be excellent, like if you're thinking about every note and having to like be excellent, so to speak, then how can you really engage in worship? Yeah. It's really kind of second nature on the music side. But I think also, this is something that I felt to mention, like when we were talking about this, was there's this spirit of perfection that I feel like exists within worship teams, which is it's like the birthing place for insecurity. Like if it's not perfect, then it's worthless. And that's like this lie from the enemy that doesn't exist. And if it does, then there's a really big problem with leadership maybe. And like, those are things that like we have to be praying through a lot, because if there's this like perfection standard, if it's not perfect, then it's completely worthless, and you're gonna get, you know, and you're always gonna fail if you fail. Then that's not the heart of God. Because again, worship is a posture. And even what I always go back to, and the story that I love is you know, Heart of Worship, when the song was written with Matt Redman, kind of going back to like, we're gonna take like the band down, we're gonna take the lights down, we're gonna take the sound down, and we're gonna figure out like, what can I bring, like what's the offering I can bring, that place of like of worship, the posture of your heart. Like, this is more than just a song, you know. And I think that has to be the foundation of why we're doing this, you know. And anyways, so whatever that is to you, I've walked into a few places before where you can just sense a spirit of perfection, like it has to be good, and there's just this level of stress and insecurity, and I'm just like, be free from that in Jesus' name, even right now, if you're listening to this podcast, because that is not the heart of God. Like, it's actually a place where God loves to take us to a next level, into a better place, but it's more of a standard of encounter. Are you encountering the presence of God? Are the people encountering the presence of God? That is the standard. It's not perfection, it's encounter. If the microphone falls off the stand, people are still going to engage with Jesus. Like, if I play the wrong chord, who cares? Our minds are and our hearts are on Jesus. That's what we're trying to say, I guess. So,
absolutely. And it's so much more impactful. I'd rather worship with a team who's just real and who's not afraid to make mistakes, but whose heart is all about Jesus first and foremost, rather than a team who has the best sound and the best musicians and the right lighting, and all of that is wonderful. But at the end of the day, it's like, is your heart in the right place? And are you focused on Jesus? Is he the center of your life, or is sounding the best and being the best worship leader the center of your life? And knowing how to navigate that I wanted to touch on something you brought up earlier about like, sometimes you come up on stage and you're thinking about, what do people think? Like, what am I wearing? And
Sure.
all of that is like real for any worship
real
leader.
life.
You're going to think about those things.
Sure.
And I just want to encourage you guys to not beat yourself up when that happens, because if you are
Yeah.
living your life the way we were talking about with the right heart and loving people, and you're spending time with the Lord, and the moment you get on stage, a thought comes into your head like, oh, I hope I picked the right outfit. I hope that these shoes go with this belt. And just knowing like it's okay that you think about that. And it has nothing to do with your heart not being in the right place.
Or just wear all black and it works.
Or just the classic black, which is what I like to do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Every week. But that's going to happen, and that's okay. And I think a lot of worship leaders start to beat themselves up thinking, am I
I thought about myself. Maybe I'm not worshiping.
My heart must not be in the right place,
right.
because, for so long the church taught you like you cannot think about yourself at all. If you're thinking about yourself, then you're not putting Jesus first. But at the end of the day, that's really impossible to do, but that doesn't make it this terrible sin. And you got to know, like, don't spend time or energy worrying about those things.
Shame is not of God.
No.
Like, I think that, even anytime something like that happens, like, look at what you are doing. It's like, okay, sure, thought about that, whatever, but I'm actually in the seat. I'm playing the drums. I'm helping serve the house.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already here. I've already said yes. Like, and so I'm hoping people encounter God. I want to encounter God. Like, start singing the words to the songs. Like, start engaging. Like, if that's something that comes in your head, or even if you're checked out, or if you kind of had a bad day, or you're kind of tired, didn't get enough sleep, like, just make the switch in your head to say, God's still good. And he's still worthy. Yeah. And I'm still going to give him my worship in this moment, and I'm still creating, and I'm here playing as an act of obedience and as an act of service. Don't beat yourself up. That's backwards. It's like that's almost worse than the thought initially.
Exactly.
Thinking about it.
Exactly. And I kind of want to bring up another angle to this discussion, because we so often try to just completely separate performance versus worship. Performance is worshiping yourself, and worship is worshiping God, and we try to keep those two things separate. But at the end of the day, it's really, really hard. We were talking about earlier, if you're a musician and you're a singer, you're an artist, and that's part of you to want to like have this part that's like, I want it to sound really good, and I want to put my best self forward. And so there's an aspect of performance that comes with worship because you're a musician, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. And it's the same way a pastor, he wants to get up and he wants to convey a message a certain way, and so he might have dynamics or examples, and part of that's performance because it's engaging and it works, and it's part of excellence to want to put your best self forward and create excellence. But you don't want to be concerned with thinking like, oh no, like part of me wants to perform, but I'm not allowed to do that because I'm worship leader. But how can I get rid of that part of myself because I want to be a great singer and I want to be a great guitar player? And it's okay that sometimes those things go together, as long as first and foremost your heart is in the right place.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right, well, I think that's huge, and obviously we love getting these topic ideas really from you guys. This actually came in from an email
from you guys.
So we love it when you send this stuff to us. So if it's stuff that you're dealing with in your team, things that you want to grow in, things that hey, this would be a cool thing, I'd love to hear your guys' heart on, and all that, shoot it over to us. You can even leave a comment on iTunes, but you can email podcast@worshiponline.com and we'll grab it. And be sure to get the free online subscription. There's a ton of musicians, man. It's been crazy just to meet people who actually like pay for the subscription, go on, watch the videos, and how it's shaping their musicianship. It's actually empowering, and it's cool because it's like they're passionate about it. And we talk about this a lot. Like, I think Shayla and I have even mentioned it like a few times, but there's something really about investing in yourself, like investing in the gift that God's given you, like to be better and to really steward it. And when it costs you something, you can actually, it's valuable to you. Whereas if, it's free, don't pay for it. It's easy to toss away. But when it really costs you something, it's an investment. So I encourage you too, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I'd love to, learn more about how these parts are played. I want to get better. I want to learn more about some of the logistics. Be sure to check it out. You just go online to worshiponline.com and check out the subscription. So be sure to check it. All right. Thanks for joining us. I'm so glad you're here. It's been so fun.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with another episode next week.